everybody. How's everyone doing today?
Great.
Good to be here. Let me first introduce my esteemed panel. On my far right is Ellen Liu, who is the Director of Media and Consumer Promotions inside Clorox. Followed by Adam Pincus, who is the Managing Partner at Media Content Group. And last but certainly not least, good friend Guy Carter, who runs Green Room Entertainment inside of OMD, who is the managing director of that division. Get that all right?
Sure.
So, it was exciting to put this group together because what I really wanted to ensure that we had a nice broad stroke of folks who have a lot of experience over the last 10 years in the area that we're going to discuss. And the topic today is brands and studios. About 10 or 11 years ago, this hot word that some people still use and some people still don't was kind of coined branded entertainment back in 1999 and 2000. For all of us who have played in the space for that long, I think back then a lot of the talk was about looking back at the 40s and 50s when brands really controlled content, they didn't control pipelines. But brands were the ones who were delivering these content experiences back to the audiences. There was a lot of hype as that internet bubble came and went for brands getting back to that mindset. And from where I sat in different positions over the last 12 years, I was looking back as I was kind of figuring out to set the stage for what we want to talk about today. Over the last 11 years, for a while the hot thing was product placement. And then it was message integration into TV and what brands are doing from a film perspective in terms of promotion. And it has continued to evolve. And I think today, now the space is its most mature. It's almost means we're now at the very much the beginning stages. Now you can have a real sophisticated conversation with this team about brands thinking of themselves as studios, thinking of themselves as media companies, as publishers, really get into what that actually means and all the different versions of what brands are doing, their agencies are doing, in terms of having this be part of the traditional marketing mix. So to throw out my first question, speaking of marketing mix, we'll start with you, Ellen, and then we can go right down the line. Original content, which I know is something everyone is talking about, something in Hollywood, something in the content creator side. Where does this sit from a Clorox perspective in terms of your marketing mix? There's certainly, so many brands are still pumping significant dollars into traditional media. I would still point to non-traditional media. And how are you guys kind of looking at this as you evaluate? Because I know there's a ton of boom coming in terms of looking for brands to fund various digital content properties. Where this sits and kind of how you guys are approaching it, because I know there are 30 or so brands inside of the Clorox family, and maybe you could also provide some recent examples of how original content is starting to kind of work for you guys as you grow, over move into next year.
Sure. So I think the world is much more complex than it ever has been. So, and I think while we're calling brand integration or brand entertainment non-traditional, I think it still has a bit of traditionalness within it. And while 10 years ago it was really innovative and complementary to our commercials, now as we think about our integrated marketing plans, we think about how can we communicate with our consumers. And frankly, we can communicate with them through the content. And it's just another avenue. And it's not to say that the commercial advertising is going to go away. I think the complement of both the content integration and then your commercial messaging is really important. And I think at Clorox, we also have a pretty sophisticated way of taking a look at the effectiveness of each discipline, each vehicle. So how hard is TV, radio, print, online driving sales? And so what we've been able to do, and what we actually had to do, is actually prove the effectiveness of brand integration. And it's not at probably the detail that we get in terms of our TV advertising, but gotten to a place where we can delineate how hard brand entertainment is working. Enough so to validate the spend and the effectiveness. And it's different for each business. So again, I'm part of a large CPG company who has a variety of products, and brand entertainment might not be for all of them. We've been able to marry certain products with certain programs that we think actually make the most sense. And I would say with more success comes more opportunities. So I think that the company's tolerance for actually trying more is a result of at least having the rationale to say, hey, this stuff actually works when you do it well.
Great. Adam, you want to talk about that a little bit? Where's the sense of market mix?
Yeah, I think, you basically said, a few years ago, I think this was the boldest people to really experiment. Usually the people with the most money to spend and could afford to throw a little bit out to this and see what would stick and what made them, made them day more interesting on some level, made them a little bit famous. I think what we've seen is more and more this has become a common part of the mix. It's always a question that's asked, and it's not asked us by people who can afford to play some big bets or do some really innovative or risky things. It's by people who are, it's by brands large and small, with different amounts of money to spend, different things that they need to accomplish, and they look at everything from a sponsorship of a web series that comes from a publisher or comes from a production company to a heavy integration with a TV show to original content that goes on television or online. It really depends it depends mostly on what they're trying to accomplish and where they feel like and a little bit of tolerance for risk still. I think that when you look at brands that we work with is, we want to go, we're very content sensitive, so we want to be in the right environments. We want to be aligned with the right kind of programming. Then you start to look at a much smaller set of things that we can be involved with, and then maybe you need to ask the question at that point, is it smarter to make something ourselves? And then can we find the right distribution partner for it so we get to some kind of scale that we can afford from traditional. But I think that, in terms of the mix, it's now fully in the mix. I don't think there's that many of our clients who don't at least consider it seriously. And they may not all do it. And as long as we sort of take an elastic view of what it is, is it sponsorship content, is it integration into content, is it custom vignettes on one of the lifestyle cable networks, is it a big, robust, multi-platform content experience, or is it in between? I think that they're, now I'd say it's a consistent question, and the answer more often than it was even when I started 4 years ago is yes, it is something we have to look at, and more often than not do so.
Great. So, as brands might start to think of themselves as studios or media company or publisher, which I know is definitely switching the way that they perceive themselves. We've got a new company there. Studios are all about ownership. Studios are all about monetizing that content. Brands are all about selling their product. So, getting into the idea of moving away from a rent model, which classically is a lot of what brands are doing. They're renting the equity of a particular property to help reach their consumers in a more engaging way. Are you talking to your clients about ownership? I mean, certainly from where we sit, we hear that, and then you hear a lot of people who are talking, some people who are walking, but our brands now getting sophisticated enough to know that they're making a 7-figure investment in a property, and they're using their marketing dollars to help, engage audiences and drive eyeballs to a particular destination. Are brands ready to be thinking that way? And if they are, how are you guiding them through that, tricky kind of space?
Well, I would say that the predominant amount of activities or in the space is leveraging existing entertainment properties that work for a variety of strategic reasons for brand decision. I think that when you say rent, one part of the definition of rent is that if there's some big problem happens in the building where you're renting, it's not a problem. And so, there's a lot of risk in putting dollars towards production funding. And, I think it's a game that's dominated by the studios because they effectively act as banks,
Sure.
and they're able to spread their risk in a way that if 1 or 2 hits covers their losses. So that's that's a difficult game for brands to play in with significant investments. However, I would say that the rise of, digital distribution and original content digitally, and the budgets that, the lower budget, comparatively lower budgets that a lot of that content has, I think has provided, in my client base, different opportunities to develop original ideas that, with producers can be developed into kind of branded content that, ideally works, as entertainment and as, an environment for brand messaging that also allows, if this is your point, of ownership, some piece of equity in the event that, a digital series or digital content can get enough traction to move to bigger platforms. But I would say that, you need to even mitigate that risk in that digital window to make sure that, you're getting, a immediate return on your investment through kind of the distribution that you're going to build into those deals.
It seems like it still has to be about the marketing value has to deliver, and it could be gravy that if some of these properties take off, potentially that there could be, upside, even though as I've traversed the landscape, a lot of companies I don't think they would know what to do with that check if it actually, came in the mail, 3 years later. But it brings me to another subject of making these types of investments where there could be an upside. And one of the challenges that I've always felt, and love to hear your guys' comments, is moving away from a year-to-year mentality, where it's all about how many impressions, how many GRPs can I get to move cases, to move volume, to a more longer-term strategy where if you're going to help fund a digital series or potentially fund a TV series, even though that's, I think, a little bit more complicated, that brands starting to recognize that if we're going to do this, that year one might not necessarily deliver against all of the key indicators or all the performance goals that you want to hit, but it could build over time, and you could be a part of something that grows over a 1 or 5 year period. So are you guys finding with your clients, and as you guys from an agency perspective, that brands can actually start to think that way, or is it still just year to year, quarter to quarter, have to hit our numbers, and we have to make sure that this property hits right away, or we have to associate ourselves with an existing property that already has a huge base of consumers from an eyeball perspective?
I can start. So
Sure.
if we can figure that out, that will be the secret to my success.
Right.
But unfortunately, the way we market our products, although it has a long-term goal, we're very short-term focused. And this becomes the problem with so many things, not just branded entertainment, but just your media spend in a particular quarter. And unfortunately, we have a number to make. We have stockholders to report to. We have volume to deliver. And sometimes those short-term goals take the place of long-term what we're trying to achieve. So I think one, we need to do some refocusing internally, right, and make some long-term bets, and figure out what does that look like? What should we expect the short-term goal to be that will pay off ultimately? Right now, it's really hard for us to actually operate that way. So, and I think we in the digital space, it is true that we're able to, year one might not be as strong as you wanted to, but guess what? Digital syndication and all sorts of other digital distribution avenues actually help build engagement, actually do get your consumers, and hopefully at the end of the day have them engaged enough that they still want to go buy your product. But I would say this is probably one of the biggest challenges I face as a brand, and helping my organization know that ultimately I do believe it'll pay off. It's just not going to get your number. So what's the right risk tolerance? What's the right amount to actually spend right now? Push them a little bit so they get a little bit more comfortable each time.
Right.
So.
Adam, I know we talked recently, and you might have some recent examples, because I know this was something that we discussed even before this.
Sure.
So.
I mean, I think the brand funding world and the entertainment business in general are pretty different in mindset and approach, but they're not that different in this way, which is it's rare that a piece of programming content will be allowed to sort of tend to fail in its first cycle and then get brought back and say, it does happen, but it's not the rule. The rule is you don't get a rating. put off the air. And I think it's true in the marketing world too, which is, look, this is success. We absolutely want to look at it for years too. And this is what we were talking about, the building of franchises. It's a lot easier, and I'd even argue it's more effective when you build a franchise and you learn from it. It succeeds with an audience, it does what you need it to do from a marketing standpoint, and you've already built it, and you've gone through that. It's always painful. I don't want to disabuse anyone of the joys of this, but it's difficult, and you look at it and you say, and there's no TV show I put on the air as a programmer, by the way, where I didn't look at the first 2 episodes and be like, damn, I wish I could make those again. Now that we've made 8, I know what was wrong with the first 2, and I think that's true in this world too. You look at it and you say, well, this distribution partner didn't perform as well as that one. The creative could work a little bit better here. We could have activated it a little bit here. Year 2's better. But the other issue is that, the message and the marketing approach and even the target consumer can change year over year. As you say, it's a little bit of a short-term business. And, you say, well, we did this thing last year because we were launching X and such a product, or we were really trying to target X and such a consumer, and that's changed a little bit, and now the idea isn't a perfect fit.
Sure.
But that said, there are the 2 examples that I'll mention just quickly.
Please.
We did something earlier this year for Husqvarna, and I wouldn't be shocked if somebody said who. They make outdoor power equipment, chainsaws, mowers, weed whackers, and things like that. They are kind of a challenger relative to the John Deeres of the world. And they have a portfolio of products and not a great way to sort of bring that out to the public. They have one piece of creative that's controlled by Sweden. They're a Swedish company. And I think the marketing team here felt it didn't resonate as well as it could with the US audience in terms of creating a differentiating space for them. So we created a digital series called Backyard Games, which is basically like a comedic reality competition show, displays of backyard skill in a competition. We got a great producer, Dan Taberski, who produces Destroy, Build, Destroy for cartoon. He's on a short list of people who do comedy reality challenge shows. That's his niche, but he's great at it. And the show is really, it's funny, it performed really well. We learned a lot, I think, and looking at it next year. And they said, wow, we did something very different for our company. We want to do it again. We want to take what we learned. And, we're now comfortable to take a slightly bigger bet. We did 3 short episodes. We can do it again. That's, I think, kind of a successful way if you're going to stay the course. And now we might make more episodes. We'll focus our distribution a little better. We'll activate a little better. The other example I would use is Audi. Just briefly, we did something for they're a brand that consistently wants to do these kinds of things. They're very focused on creating brand desire. They have a specific reason they do it, in terms of building their brand relative to their competition. And we created something very specifically with the intention of creating a franchise, exactly I think as you would develop television programming, where it's like, let's take it out, let's gauge audience interest in it. Do they like the world? Do they like the characters? Do they get our connection? Is it working from a marketing standpoint? And if it is, we're definitely going to look at, we've created an open-ended structure here. We've created something where we could take it to the next level, whether that's as long-form television or that's as more short-form episodes or whatever it might be. But coming into it, the idea was franchise.
Sure. Guy, any other examples that you can talk about?
Of kind of original content, right?
Yeah, original content where there was a bit more focus on a longer term strategy, or where the brand allowed it to breathe a little bit. I think Adam made a lot of really smart choices or smart comments about the fact that it's hard, right? Because you have to have some success in order for the brand to feel like, yes, let's go into a year or 2.
Right. Well, I'll talk about one of our clients, Intel.
Yep.
Intel has a long relationship as a big spender with Google and Google YouTube, and kind of a part of an early conversation was how can we do more with particularly YouTube, given that there's such a deep relationship between the 2 companies. And so we developed some ideas around Intel's positioning of Sponsors of Tomorrow and as a technology that helps people innovate and help people create. And so just went through this kind of same process we do of developing an RFP and taking it out to kind of the entertainment community, and drilled down with Catalyst, with Action Couture's company, and you guys in CA was involved in that. And so we landed on an idea that we do have a franchise brand called Idea Jam, Intel Idea Jam, and Jam is sort of as a kind of lingo for brainstorm. And sort of long story short, we've done a number of these idea jams that bring in a lot of kind of action social network, and people kind of on the internet, and people in his kind of studio office come together and kind of attack and brainstorm and come up with action steps for topics such as creating content, helping solve educational problems, creating a song. And so we got a lot of robust content that's still being released, and on the distribution side, we've got the deal with YouTube, so we're promoted on YouTube. We're distributed through the Google distribution network. So the distribution side, we felt comfortable going in because of our partners, and we felt like the Catalyst guys and Ashton and his know-how in this world really came to bear for this project. And I guess the point is, we've established in our minds Idea Jam as an Intel platform that now can go different directions.
Right. So let's spend a minute talking about distribution, right? Because at the end of the day, it all starts with an amazing idea. The brand we have to figure out the right balance between the brand being integrated into the show versus the brand just delivering a content experience. But as we look at TV over the last 4 years, when you talk about original content, from my perspective, it's been really tricky. There's a very established way that the content development process on the TV side works, and brands inserted themselves upstream in that conversation. It seems to be tricky, seems to be difficult. And then you look at what's happening now in the digital space with what even you mentioned, YouTube getting into the premium content space. We've had a lot of discussions with the AOLs and the Yahoos and the MSN. They all want to start to think of themselves as people who are really delivering original premium content. So it's not so much TV versus digital, because then there's the third bucket of how can TV and digital really work in sync together. But does it start with the idea? Does it start with the distributors? Where are you guys really seeing kind of the ideas come from? And are they coming as pure play digital? Are they coming as pure play TV? Or are you guys sitting back and thinking about all the different ways that this content could work, potentially using some of your traditional TV buys? Certainly all of your clients and your brand certainly are starting to increase their social media numbers, and so there's an audience to feed there. So where does distribution start in the conversation? Maybe even cite some examples of either strictly TV, strictly digital, or even examples where you guys were using both to really drive a complete multi-platform distribution strategy.
So I still think it always starts with the idea. It's always going to start with content, because people still want to watch good content. So regardless of where it's distributed, I think it still has to start with the idea. And then you have to find a place where your brand makes the most sense. And sometimes it's integrated into the content and you're part of the solution, and sometimes you're a complement to the content. So if you have a good idea, if you have good content, if you know how your brand's going to fit into it, that's a good start. I would say then distribution is, almost as important. And it is more interesting now that there's different avenues. And I think, digital distribution and working with all these digital partners, they're really hungry for good content. And so they've been very open to different ways of partnering with clients. And I think on the TV side, they're getting there too. And I think it's a change in mindset, though, in terms of when you enter that conversation. It feels like in digital, you might be able to enter it earlier than you are with TV. And I think, we have had 2 successful, web series. One that's integrated with the Disney.com, and it's about keeping your kids active and playful and resourceful and things to do with your kids. And certainly we are a cleaning product that helps you clean up after the mess. So again, we're not the solution, but we're ancillary to the content, and we partnered with a partner like Disney, who we know is our target. So we've been able to do that well. And then we've also partnered with iVillage and our friends at NBC Universal for our Hidden Valley product, which we were trying to encourage kids to eat more vegetables. So Hidden Valley as a vegetable enabler. So we partnered with the folks there to create original series, which hopefully helps educate parents that, hey, they can get kids to eat more vegetables by using Hidden Valley Ranch. And again, partnering, we have the idea, we have the concept, we partnered with a good partner, and we helped make that successful. So to me, you need both those actually to make it successful. And I think, again, more successes on the digital front right now, but I think TV's going to get there, and frankly, TV is becoming more digital, so ultimately it'll be the same thing in a couple of years.
Adam, the one difference I see is it does seem to me, from my perspective, that there are certain things that are very different from the two platforms, right? TV's, for the most part, a lean back and watch, situation, even though, to your point, it's changing, and there's a lot more shareability, and the percentages of people who are on their laptops as they're watching TV, as we all know, is increasing. But one of the benefits that I think we're seeing of the pure digital play is, A, you can buy your audience, and there's lots of different outlets in terms of finding that audience, but also it's the ability to potentially create a destination inside of a portal or standalone where it's a much more immersive experience. I mean, everyone loves to use the word engagement, and I'm beginning to think like that's the new brand entertainment word like 10 years ago. But any thoughts there in terms of how brands are really looking at it? And I get they can complement each other, but to me there's a lot more you could do from a digital perspective in terms of live chat, social media, shoulder programming, where the brand can build around the content and not just have to be worried about how much are we getting inside of the content. So love to hear your thoughts in that area.
Yeah.
And any examples always make it more relative.
Right. Well, I agree that the idea is fundamental. But I also think that, and this is sort of something that I had to learn on the job a little bit, that it comes down to what are you trying to do, and who you're trying to reach, and what are you trying to do with them once you reach them. And so that determines a lot about how you approach what kind of idea is the right idea, and then how you approach distribution. So back to sort of what do they do well?
Sure.
TV, aside from being just still sexy for people, which it is, you say, we're going to get this on TV. They're like, wow, I'm listening. It has a lot of scale still, and it has a lot of power to just get an audience that is already there and engage them with something that hopefully they understand as part of the programming environment that they're already in, and feel totally natural and at home there. And it's hugely powerful. And then if you can have digital work in concert with that to do other things, to drive social media, to drive tune-in. I'm not sure how effective that is, but we try. To drive that deeper engagement that you're talking about, to make adjacent advertising more relevant, to get people more connected to the actual brand and the specific marketing objectives that you're trying to do. Digital's really good at that, and yes, they can work together. And I'll talk about a couple of things quickly. I mean, one is another Audi example, and I hate to just use them, but they like to do this stuff, and they are always pushing us to think about it in interesting ways. They have a partnership, long-standing sponsorship of the U.S. ski team, and the Winter Olympics were coming up. This is 2010. They are not a rings holder. They are, again, very connected to skiing, but they wanted to do something that was broader than just the ski audience and tap into sort of the interest in the sort of the rising interest in the Olympics that was happening right before the Winter Games. So we made a documentary, a long-form documentary about the U.S. ski team training for the Olympics, and put it on NBC right before the Olympics. They were the Olympics network. So that's great from a scale standpoint. We got a better rating in the time period than NBC's own programming, although I'm not, that says a lot of things. Yeah. But I think that we got a very good rating. We got a lot of scale out of that. But the way that we really made it work harder than that was to start 10 weeks out, a very long time in television terms, way too long to drive tune-in, to drive interest and buzz around the project through social media. We dropped a lot of very short content into social media to ski enthusiasts and people who are sort of interested, naturally interested in the subject matter, and started to drive some awareness of it, drive people to a site. Then we started to drop longer form webisodic content into editorial environments where that was relevant to NBCOlympics.com and ski sites, driving tune-ins about maybe 10 days out. Mm-hmm. Then we started television promotion in the traditional window that you would start driving television promotion, 7 days out, cross-channel promotion on the air on NBC, and ultimately drove a rating. Then you take that piece of content to the cable networks and re-air it on USA and on Universal Sports. Then we took it to DirecTV, and then we started to drive long-form digital distribution through Hulu and iTunes. So everything was pointed towards first build buzz through social, then drive an audience to television through a combination of television and digital. then as soon as the NBC premiere happened, it was all about driving to iTunes for the kind of long tail on the content.
Right.
And that accumulated a tremendous audience. And because of Audi's natural connection to the subject matter, it didn't feel like, this incredible intrusion by a brand. We created interstitials that used footage from the film,
Right.
intercut with some car footage and stuff, make it clear the ownership over the program. But it wasn't so in your face that you'd be like, I really don't want to watch like an hour-long Audi commercial.
Right.
Because who does?
Sure.
I mean, well, somebody does. But
Audi.
yeah, I would watch it, I guess.
Right.
But, that was, I think, a way that they worked
Yep.
together. But, I mean, there's something still, I come from television, and so I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like there's something still really powerful about television, but it doesn't do everything.
Right.
It does some things really well, and then you need to look elsewhere for the rest.
So, Guy, I mean, sticking with distribution, but moving it a little bit to the left, now being inside of talent agency for a year, I've seen more and more that the big content creators actually now really are asking us to connect them with brands, and they want to sit down at the table with brands. And my question is, when is the right time? I mean, because clearly, to Adam's point earlier, there are some similarities between Hollywood and marketers, but there's a lot of non-similarities, as well. So, brands are obviously probably are and seem to be very open to sitting down with some of the biggest content creators, but are they ready to really have the conversation way upstream during the development process, or is it still much more comfortable for them to just see it in the upfront if we're talking about a TV situation? And if they are more comfortable upstream, from a content creator perspective, can that work? I mean, and can they get on board, at that point, pre-distribution, and really, understand that distribution is going to be something that's going to be figured out along the way?
So I would say that, yeah, for sure. We are, and our clients are always interested in knowing what the ideas are and
Sure.
talking to. That's one reason they look to us, because we're in the marketplace with 14 or 15 different clients, and so we're talking to a lot of different people all the time, and so part of the reason I think that we're brought on by brands is that we know what's going on, we know what the ideas are, so that it kind of allows us to
Right.
we should go talk to brand A. And so I would say I guess the first part of it, there's a lot of receptivity to understanding what the ideas are out there. In terms of brands getting involved before distribution, I think that it's in TV it's a little more difficult because the networks are going to want to have a say in terms of what brands are going to be involved, and they don't want to lock out categories in the whole ad sales
Yep.
perspective. That's not to say that, bringing, once network conversations start happening, the idea of having a brand with a flag in a project, not as a commitment, but all the time we're putting flags in pilots and things because we want to be first in line if the show gets picked up, and kind of on the production side, they know we're interested, and I know all the network people, so I can hopefully, make some connections before anything comes to the upfront. So I think that, yeah, those conversations are definitely happening, and I think on the digital side, yeah, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
To get involved before, because as a brand and representative of a brand, you're helping to create the distribution strategy.
Well, Jordan gave me
David?
the 5, now it's 2 minutes.
Can I make a comment just on?
Yeah, go ahead, absolutely.
Am I allowed to comment?
Can we go a little longer, Jordan?
Sorry.
A couple more minutes?
Um,
Okay. She shook her head.
I
and
just,
said yes.
I think what just important, so when Adam was talking about, I mean, obviously distribution is important, but having a distribution strategy, right? So
Sure.
he took a look at the different disciplines and different venues and said, here's how I'm going to market
Yep.
on social media. Here's going to market digital. Here's going to do TV. Here's going to do print. So I think we all agree, if it doesn't have distribution, it's just a good idea and it goes nowhere.
That's right.
But having actually a distribution strategy and taking advantage of what each discipline uniquely brings. So social media brings maybe more engagement, more interactive, same as digital. TV brings maybe sit back, but that's how you customize the content. So you think about creating the content, having a distribution strategy that takes advantage of the disciplines, and customizing your content for those disciplines. And I think it was really, really brilliant. So anyway,
Yeah,
nice work.
And I jump on that too, and because you guys represent a lot of big names,
Yep.
and So, a question for me is, if you're pitching me something with, a big, Hollywood name, and I'm thinking about social media strategy, I'm going to want to know what that celebrity is going to do to help promote.
Of course.
What kind of rights do I have to the content that I can unilaterally make distribution decisions with? And so, all of that is in the deal, right? And it's all like, asset usage and distribution, all that needs to be wrapped in up front in a deal.
I didn't get to everything. We didn't get to ROI. We didn't get to activation, but there's only a couple minutes left, so wanted to throw it out to the audience for a couple of questions. Yes?
Let me give you the mic. So the streamers can't hear.
Disney, yep.
That
Can you start over? We couldn't hear you up here.
when we're talking about branded series for web or digital distribution, in some cases, Ellen talked about iVillage and another media distribution partner coming. Do you look to those media partners to come to you, or do you sometimes say, okay, we want the idea, we will produce it with some entity and then distribute it wherever we like? Which, is it both, or is one or the other?
It's actually, it's both. And actually, I think, good ideas come from everywhere, actually. And I think we challenge the industry. I challenge my agencies. I challenge the people that work for me. I challenge people out in other departments to say, you have a good idea, let's talk about it. Let's make this work. And so I think, it's imperative, though, to all work together. And so I would say, absolutely, help us build, an interesting concept, and let's actually do it together. But I would say that's my biggest challenge to everyone that I work with, which is you need to bring the good ideas. You need to bring the idea that's going to differentiate me from my competition, and we'll be successful together.
And the second question was, Adam, you had mentioned backyard games success. Define what made that successful. Was it a certain number of views that you had hoped for, or was that the measure of success?
That's the ROI discussion, which could be a 45-minute panel
Yeah,
in
exactly.
itself,
Next time.
which we'll have to do next time. But if you want to touch upon it.
Well, I'll just say very quickly two things. I think, because that is a much longer, deeper conversation. One is video views and completion rates and the level of engagement around those video views. So, not just somebody clicked on it, watched it for 3 seconds and clicked off, but how do we compare against other, completion rates for other kinds of content? And the other would be, in this particular case, it was about the brand and awareness of the portfolio products, because I think that with a single piece of creative that doesn't address the portfolio, one of the objectives for the content is, do you know we make chainsaws and also zero-turn mowers? And so a brand tracker study that demonstrates that more people know that now than they did before means it was successful by some measure. And there are others too, but that's the short answer.
Any other questions from the audience? No? No? Okay, well, thanks, guys. Really
Thank you very much.
time.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go in 10 minutes. The next one.